So let me just start with a disclaimer for this video. Just because I say this is an overrated performance doesn't mean it wasn't a good performance. Obviously it was a good performance. Like that, you can't deny that this was a really good performance. But at the same time, something can be both good and overrated. Overrated just means people maybe hype it up a little bit more than what it actually was. It was a great performance. Obviously, if you see the thumbnail, you know the fight I'm talking about. I'm of course talking about Cody Garbrandt's performance over Dominic Cruz. Yes, great performance, good performance. It wasn't a shit performance, okay? That's not what I'm arguing here. I'm not going to argue Cody Garbrandt. Damn, he should have lost that fight against Dominic Cruz. I'm not going to argue that. That would be ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. That's not true. That's not a fact. I'm just here to argue the facts and what I seen in that fight. All the judges. One thing I will say. All the judges gave that first round to Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz didn't win that first round. Cody Garbrandt clearly won the first round. But the second round was clearly Dominic Cruz's round, and then the fifth round was clearly Dominic Cruz. So, obviously, Dominic Cruz won 2 rounds in that performance. Like, he just did. He obviously won 2 rounds in that fight. And, Cody Garbrandt, in the rounds he won, he did look really good. But I think people are just taking him, playing around with Dominic Cruz, using good head movement in that fight. Like, I just rewatched the fight as well, just to make sure I wasn't remembering wrong. Like, I did make sure I rewatched this, so this is fresh in my mind. What I did notice, obviously, Dominic Cruz's style. Cody Garbrandt had been preparing since he was in high school for Dominic Cruz. Like, he had been preparing pretty much his whole life, his whole teenage years to fight one man in Dominic Cruz. So obviously he's going to be very well prepared. He's been studying Dominic Cruz his whole life. But the thing is, if you've been studying your whole life for one man, you'd think you'd get a bit more of a dominant performance. This is where I'm going to argue a little bit. Like, it wasn't a good performance, yeah, but you still lost 2 rounds quite clearly and convincingly to Dominic Cruz. And Dominic Cruz, he wasn't the same Dominic Cruz at that point. I know that you can't really use that against Cody Garbrandt, because Cody Garbrandt, he can't control what Dominic Cruz shows up. But, like, Dominic Cruz had, some back and forth injuries. He came back against Taika Musagaki. Then, obviously, he was off for like 2 years again. He did come back. He fought TJ Dillashaw in a very close fight. Then he did beat Uriah Faber, so I guess he was sort of active. He fought Garbrandt a few months later. But, like, the performance, it was a lot closer than people... Like, you'll hear people talk about Cody Garbrandt's performance and say, he was the best fighter in the UFC that night. Like, nobody was going to beat him. He was getting tagged a lot by Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz isn't the hardest puncher. Does he have some KOs? Yeah, but he's not really a knockout artist. Most of the time, you're not going to see Dominic Cruz go out there and just one punch KO someone. Like, he doesn't have really that many KOs, if we're being honest about Dominic Cruz. He's a good fighter, obviously. He's arguably the greatest bantamweight ever. So it is still, obviously, I'm not arguing that this is a shit win for Cody Garbrandt. It is a good win. But when I think greatest performance, like greatest championship performances or greatest just straight performances, I'm thinking Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, the third fight, where he just completely demolishes him every single round, cuts him up, beats him up. If there was anyone besides Max Holloway, they're getting KO'd. I think of Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. That's one of the best performances. Like, it's not just an instant KO. I mean, if you want to argue just straight performances, you could just straight argue Conor McGregor over Jose Aldo, because he just instantly KOs him against the greatest featherweight of all time, Jose Aldo. Like, he literally just runs through Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. Like, that is going to be up there as one of the craziest performances. Like, there are so many performances that are better than Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz, and I'm sick of not I'm sick of letting people get away with this. They say it's the greatest performance of all time, but I've watched it. It was a good performance, but not the greatest. There are so many more performances that are better than this fight. It gets so overrated. Just because Cody Garbrandt does the fucking robot after dodging a punch, he pretends to do a push up in a round he clearly loses. It doesn't mean it was the greatest performance. Just because someone's laughing at you, that would be like saying Jose Medina on Dana White Contender Series is the future GOAT, because while he's getting the shit beaten out of him, he's laughing, he's mocking. It's like saying Nate Diaz's performance over Conor McGregor in the second fight is one of the greatest performances, because he points at McGregor and laughs when he's running. It's like, oh, that was a masterclass by Nate Diaz. Showmanship doesn't equal masterclass performance. Just because someone's pointing and laughing or doing something to mock their opponent, that doesn't equal that you're the greatest fighter on the night. The overall performance was good, but people just, if you see it, people will post that video of him doing the robot, mocking Dominic Cruz. That doesn't equal greatest performance. Yeah, he had a 10-8 round in the fourth round, so obviously that was a very good round for him. It was a good performance. But there's so many better performances. Like Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez, in my opinion, is one of the best championship performances, because he was so flawless in there. He's doing the showmanship, but not just is he using showmanship, he's literally getting it done using showmanship. He's got his hands behind his back. He's begging Eddie Alvarez to come in and come at him, and then he free pieces him. He drops him. Like the Conor McGregor performance against Eddie Alvarez was literally a mythical performance. Like, that is what people say. That's what should be stated when people say, that was the greatest performance. Nobody on that night was beating Conor McGregor. Do I agree with that? I don't know. Maybe if someone was changing levels on him and shooting, it would be a bit different. But the way he fought against Eddie Alvarez was literally that was some mystique. That was some crazy aura Conor McGregor had for that fight. He's dodging so many shots. Every shot he seemed to land like flush was just knocking Eddie Alvarez down. And that's an Eddie Alvarez who came off a win over Rafael dos Anjos, who at the time was fucking amazing fighter. Still a really good fighter today. Obviously not the most entertaining fighter today, but he's still a very good fighter. And Eddie Alvarez beat him. He knocked him out. And Conor McGregor just ran through that guy. Maybe if it was RDA versus McGregor, it would have been different. But that doesn't matter. We can say if, buts, and maybes, but we seen Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez, who was the reigning UFC lightweight champion at the time, and he fucking absolutely toasted him. He fucking ran through him. It was an amazing performance. Another performance I'd say was better, and obviously there is an asterisk for this performance, but just because it is a championship fight, I'm going to include it. Obviously, Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. That is a fucking masterclass performance. Obviously, I know I'm not going to argue that that version of the TKZ, the TKZ. I just called him the TKZ, the KZ I should say, but you know what I mean. The Korean Zombie. Obviously, that's a wash version of the Korean Zombie. I'm not going to sit here and argue that was prime Korean Zombie, because obviously it wasn't. But the way, the performance Alexander Volkanovski put on him, it was just like a fucking... He looked about 2 or 3 levels better than the Korean Zombie, who is, still a good fighter at that time. Not in his peak, but still a really good fighter. And he absolutely smashed him. He beat him every round, and then he finished him in the 4th round. After, absolutely beating the shit out of him. Cody Garbrandt, obviously, that wasn't prime Cruz either. That wasn't prime Cruz. We all know that wasn't prime Cruz. That is Dominic Cruz coming off injury after injury layoff. I think his feet, he had something wrong with his feet during that fight as well. I forgot what the exact illness or impairment was, but his feet were fucked at that point. Obviously, he moved a lot slower at that point. But I'm not going to take away from Cody Garbrandt's performance, because at the end of the day, Cody Garbrandt can't, he can't do anything for what version of Dominic Cruz shows up. I'm not going to use that against him. I'm just stating, the fighter that showed up, he looked good against, but he did lose 2 rounds against Dominic Cruz. Yeah, you can't argue that. I've seen people try and say, that was the best fighter. He won every round. It's like, no, he really didn't. Like he really didn't. I'm sorry to say. You know, I like Cody Garbrandt. I like Dominic Cruz, but like, come on, no, he didn't win every single round. It's just not. That's idiocy. Like that's just not true. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say. Like like I say, there are so many more performances we can talk about that are better than that performance. You know, like I say, Volkanovski's performance against Max Holloway to win the belt, that was a good performance. People think Max Holloway won that for some reason. I don't understand how. That was very clearly like Volk won almost every round. Didn't get hit at all. That was a leg kick performance, like a really good leg kick performance. Even Israel Adesanya beating Robert Whittaker was like a fucking he's him performance. Like that was a really good way to win the title. Like that was a great performance to beat Robert Whittaker in that fashion. The first fight, obviously the second fight lot closer. You could argue a Robert Whittaker win, but first performance, you gotta fucking give it to Israel Adesanya. That was a really good performance. I would say Israel Adesanya's performance over Robert Whittaker was better than the Cody Garbrandt performance. Unless people are arguing like that because he went all rounds is a better masterclass. You can have a masterclass that doesn't go all 5 rounds. Like if you put on a striking masterclass and don't KO that person. I'm going to take somebody who has a striking masterclass and KO someone. I'm going to take that a bit better. I feel like that is showing your skills a lot better because you're literally going in there. You're putting this person out. Like, I feel like people don't realize just because you go all 5 rounds in a fight against someone, that doesn't equal that is a better performance. It doesn't, you know? Like, that's just my thoughts on it. Like, sometimes, obviously, if you're fighting like Max Holloway, who's got a granite chin and can't be KO'd, then yeah, I understand it. But if you're knocking someone all over the place and you don't get them out of there, like I'd sort of rate someone who does get them out of there, just because you have so many opportunities to get the fight over and done with, and you don't go and finish it. Like I don't know, Dominic Cruz is tough. Obviously, guy's got really great recovery. He does recover really quickly, but still, man, like let's be real, like, there's so many moments in that fight where instead of mocking Dominic Cruz and pointing and laughing and, you know, pulling a Nate Diaz in there, you could have maybe got a finish in that fight, Cody Garbrandt, but instead you just mocked him, you know, you did the robot, and hey, I guess it worked out for you because people think he had the greatest performance in UFC history, but it just wasn't the greatest performance. Like, I'm sorry, it wasn't. You know, I know it sounds like I'm just shitting all over his performance, but I'll keep stating it was a good performance. A great performance, even. Not the greatest performance, hence it's overrated. Things can be good and great and still be overrated. Like I say, just like things, like people cannot be that good but still be underrated. Like people, I don't know. I feel like people's definition of overrated, underrated, they just don't understand it. Like it just doesn't equal underrated doesn't equal great, and overrated doesn't equal bad. You know, like there's multiple. You could argue. Who's a good example? You know, like you could argue fucking. Oh, what's that guy's name? The guy who fought Chris Montigno. Oh my god, I can't even remember his name right now off the top of my head. Guido Canetti. You can argue Guido Canetti is a very, very underrated fighter. You know, he's got some pretty good wins. He had a good performance against Chito Vera. But at the same time, nobody's going to argue he's a great fighter. He's a good fighter, but he can be underrated and not be great. Like that, I think that's just what people in the MMA community need to realize. Like stating something's overrated and underrated doesn't exactly mean... Like you can claim Guido Canetti's underrated. It doesn't mean I'm arguing he would have been UFC champion or anything like that. But anyway, I just want to say, like, performances I would have over Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz is obviously the aforementioned Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. You know, how can you not have that one over there? That is just a great performance. Then obviously, maybe people overrate it because of who Cruz is or was. Like, Cruz was a great champion, but if you're just going overall performance over a contender or a champion, like even Habib Nurmagomedov over Ally Quinta was a really good performance. You know, did Habib go out there and completely massacre him? No. But he went out there, jabbed him up, used the jab, used his striking, won the fight with something he's not really used to using in his fights. He went out there and he gave just a jab performance, like a jabbing masterclass. You could argue that is a greater performance because Habib, I'm pretty sure, won every round in that fight. Maybe I should go rewatch that fight, give my thoughts on that performance. If anyone was interested in that, I doubt it though. But like Habib versus Iaquinta, I'm sure he won every round, and he literally jabbed to a victory there. I think he even got some 10-8s in that fight. Like yeah, 50-43. Like, he fucking absolutely massacred Iaquinta. Like, that, you could argue that is a, like, I mean, you definitely got to argue that's a better performance. Kamaru Usman over Tyron Woodley is a better performance. I know it's not that flashy, but he won every round dominantly, got 10-8s in that round. Like, maybe you could argue Cody Garbrandt over Dominic Cruz is one of the flashiest performances, but even then, Conor McGregor over Eddie Alvarez is more flashy. Like, I don't get it. I don't get the narrative that no man on that night was beating Cody Garbrandt. You could have put fucking Godzilla and King Kong's fucking love child in there against Cody Garbrandt, and he wasn't fucking winning that fight. Like, no, it's just not true. It just wasn't true. There was many people who could have beat him. Like, you put him in there with fucking John Dobson. John Dobson might have caught him on the night. The way Cody Garbrandt's fucking chin was out there, you know, you put him against somebody as fast and powerful as John Dodson, he could have fucking got that. I know that's crazy to say, but John Dodson, very underrated fighter. Like, plenty of people really, really could have got that one done, but who knows, man? Like, fucking generally, who knows? I don't understand. I guess people like Cody Garbrandt, so they just argue that that's like the greatest win of all time. But I just feel like there was plenty of people who could have got that fight done on that night. And I mean, he did lose his fucking next fight to TJ Dillashaw, so obviously, I don't know, man. I guess at the same time, Dominic Reyes' performance over John Jones, I know he technically didn't get the win, but you could argue, I guess, you'd put that in the same boat as Cody Garbrandt just because, you know, Reyes did arguably win 3 rounds of that fight, but he did lose 2 rounds as well. But I guess that is like one of the greatest losing performances, even though he probably shouldn't have lost that fight to John Jones. But yeah, I don't know, man. I watched the fight. I wasn't completely blown away. Obviously, he looked good. You know, I've said it about 7 times. He looked good in that fight, but like, it just, it wasn't the performance I was expecting with all the hype that people give it. Obviously, I've seen it before, but I needed to rewatch it. Maybe jog my memory. Maybe I was thinking of, maybe I was forgetting stuff. But I watched it. I had my eyes peeled. I was watching the whole thing, and like, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't the greatest performance. That's all I'll say. Not going to say it was one of the worst. Like, see, that's not what I'm arguing. I'm not arguing Cody Garbrandt's performance over Dominic Cruz was bad or one of the worst performances of all time. Oh, what a shit performance. Here's the fucking thing, you guys. What a fucking shit performance. Like, here's the fucking thing, you guys. Like, it was good. Wasn't top 10. I'm going to argue that. It wasn't top 10. Let me think off the top of my head. Kamaru Usman's performance over Tyron Woodley. Kamaru Usman's performance against Gilbert Burns. I know he got dropped in. He did get dropped in that fight, actually. But I'll say Kamaru Usman versus Tyron Woodley. Better performance. Completely dominates Tyron Woodley. Very hyped up. Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. You know, you got to have that. Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 1. Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 3. See, I'm already at 5. Habib Nurmagomedov versus Al Iaquinta. Habib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. You got to have that performance. Dustin didn't win a round. Complete masterclass on the ground. As soon as it hit the ground, Dustin Poirier was like just completely fucked in that fight. Max Holloway versus. You got to have Max Holloway versus Jose Aldo in that second fight. He just sort of ran through Aldo. If I'm remembering that correctly, actually, I might be remembering that incorrectly. But like Max Holloway, he's had some really good performances as well. How many of them were championship performances though? when he was champion, he beat Ortega. Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega. That was the fight I was looking for. Like that. That was a much better performance in my opinion. That was a better performance than Cody Garbrandt over Dominic Cruz. I think I'm at 8 now. What else could I have included in there? Jose Aldo, he had some really good performances. Obviously, some of them were in the WEC. Jose Aldo, the Chad Mendes was a good performance. The first one, he got that nice knee. Was that the second one? That was the first one, yeah. The second one was the closer one. Yeah, that was a really good performance there. And then, oh fuck, man, like, what was? I was gonna include it Charles Oliveira fight, but I won't do that just because Charles did fucking just get fucking ran through. Oh, Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira. That was a really good performance too. I'd argue that's probably better. You know, beat Charles Oliveira sort of at his own game, club and sub. So yeah, there's 10 performances. Obviously, there's probably more. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Like, I'm not arguing these are my top 10 greatest performances. I'm just saying these top 10 performances off the top of my head are better than Cody Garbrandt's performance over Dominic Cruz. I know I'm just shitting on this man's whole career. This is the one thing he had going for him, and I'm sort of just taking it away from him. But the guy's still obviously a very great fighter, great performance. Obviously not in his prime anymore is Cody Garbrandt, but I think he'll beat Brian Kelleher. So I'm not just hating on Cody Garbrandt. I'm just saying the performance, not the best performance of all time. But anyway, I've ranted on long enough. This video has gone on quite much longer than I was expecting it to. So if you did make it the whole way through this video, make sure you give this video a like. Let me know your thoughts. Do you have Dominic Cruz versus Cody Garbrandt as the best performance of all time? Let me know. Am I wrong on this, or do you agree, or I don't know. Let me know your best performances in the UFC, just in the comments as well. I want to hear them. But anyway, yeah, sorry this video went so long, but make sure you give this one a like. Comment, like I say, your thoughts on this video, your thoughts on who your best performances are. If you have Cruz versus Garbrandt as your best pick. And if you're not already subscribed, put on the notifications. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.